If you've been fasting all day, how do you not just inhale the food when you sit down to eat? Let's talk about it. I have always been a fast eater. Ever since I was a kid, I tended to just eat really fast. My mom was always getting on to me about that. But it's funny because intermittent fasting actually helped me to slow down my eating, whereas a lot of people find that when they start intermittent fasting, their eating like speeds up, like they just can't wait to get to that meal. I think it's important to note, I took a very slow route to pushing out my meal. I pushed out breakfast a little later and a little later in the day, instead of just going straight from eating 5 or 6 meals a day to, say, a 16-8. I really didn't experience that ravenous hunger that a lot of people seem to experience when they kind of jump into a longer fasting window. However, when I went from a 24 down to OMAD, 1 meal a day, that was a little bit of a leap, because for one thing, I was only eating once a day. So the quantity of my food kind of had to adjust so that I could go all day the next day and not eat until supper. And I think intermittent fasting itself, just practicing it helped me to become a more patient person. And so then at my meal, I was just a bit more patient, when I sat down. But it's a process. So the first thing I would say is, if you are finding that you are ravenously hungry by your mealtime, you should consider either eating more at your meal or make your fasting window shorter. But if it's not so much that you're just ravenously hungry, it's that you just kind of dive in and just start eating without thinking, I'm going to take you through the process that I go through and the things that help me to slow down and enjoy the meal. So first, let's talk about how I approach my meal. And I think that's a very important part of this. It might sound silly, but one of the first things I do before I sit down to eat is I always check with myself to make sure that I don't need to go to the restroom, because I've found that if I need to pee, I'm like a really impatient person, and I rush, and I tend to just, eat really fast. And another thing I do is I do a little mental check-in right before I eat, especially at night. You're kind of rushed trying to get all the food on the table. The kids are hungry. So as I'm putting the food on the table, I kind of do a mental check-in and ask myself, are you stressed right now? And I just remind myself to breathe and to relax, because there really is no hurry. I really want our family dinner to be nice and relaxing and to really enjoy the meal. We all sit down as a family, and the first thing we do is say the blessing. We're Christians, and so we thank God for the food, which I think is an important step. And after the blessing is over, I take just a few seconds, just, maybe 2 or 3 seconds, to be grateful for the food and to remind myself that not everyone out there has food. There are people who are literally starving, because sometimes I would think, oh man, I'm starving. And I've really started to remind myself, I'm not starving. There are people out there who have experienced starvation and are currently experiencing it, and I'm not one of those people. I read actually a couple of books that really put this into perspective for me, that were first-hand accounts of actual starvation situations. And one was, First They Killed My Father, and that was about the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. And the second one was Unbroken, about Louis Zamperini, who was a prisoner of war, and he actually experienced a lot of starvation. So when I realized that is not the situation I'm in, it gives me just a bit of perspective and helps me to really be grateful for the food. And then I start eating, and I try to really enjoy each bite as much as I can. Now, again, this is a place where I can certainly improve, but I've made big strides here. I always try to be aware of how fast I'm eating. So if I catch myself just shoveling it in, I say, okay, I just need to slow it down a bit. And I try not to get caught up in trying to be perfect at it. I just say, okay, let's slow down a little bit. And I remind myself I enjoy the food a lot more, because if that's the goal, to enjoy the food, then I need to slow down and actually taste what I'm eating. Another rule we have at the table is no devices and no TV. So there are no cell phones at the table, and the television is not on. It's not playing in the background or anything. There was a time where for me this was a very strict rule. I told myself, no eating in front of the TV, and no eating with my phone in my hand or nearby, so that I could focus just on the eating. And one thing that really taught me was how often I really didn't want to eat, because I thought, wow, that seems really boring. I don't really want to eat if all I have to do is just sit there and eat. Like, I don't want to do this. So it was a helpful experience. I don't have that hard and fast rule anymore, because I feel like I've really learned how to still be mindful, even in those situations, like on date night or our family night, when we're like watching a movie and eating. I have learned how to stop when I'm full, and to still pay attention even when there are things going on. But again, that's not the majority of the time when we are sitting down for a meal. And so while I'm eating, I'm just paying attention to, am I feeling full? And when I start to feel full, then I stop eating. So after I'm done with the meal, I stand up from the table, I do a little mental check-in, and I just say, okay, how am I feeling right now? Am I feeling overly full, like miserably full, or am I feeling a little over full, or do I just feel satisfied? I'm always striving to just feel good and full, not over full. And I found that when I hit that right pace of, like, I'm not eating too fast, I can pretty much tell that I'm getting full and I have the stopping power. It's really more when I have really eaten fast the whole time that I tend to feel overly full at the end of the meal. And if I find that I've overeaten, I don't beat myself up about it. I just say, hey, you felt a little bit too full, so let's try to work on that tomorrow, make it just a little bit slower maybe. But ultimately, even if I do feel like, oh man, I kind of feel overly full, the main thing I'm concerned about is results. So for me, like when I'm trying to lose weight, as long as the scale's going down, I don't really beat myself up too much if there are times where it's like, oh wow, I kind of felt over full for several nights in a row. The main thing is that the scale is reflecting what I want it to do. For me, this is a process. It's been a process of gradual improvement over time. And I'm proud to say that it's really rare for me to feel like, wow, I just really overate and I feel absolutely miserable. Whereas I used to feel that way after pretty much every meal. That's what's helped me slow down my eating and enjoy the meal. And if you have had this same problem of just eating way too fast, but you've learned how to slow down and you use a different technique, please leave it in the comments below. Okay, thank you for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you found it helpful. If you're currently trying to lose weight and you're just having a hard time, check out my Slow and Steady Success Academy. There you'll find a course called Intermittent Fasting for Weight Loss 101, where I take you through the entire process from start to finish and how to implement intermittent fasting successfully in your life for weight loss. The link is in the description. The All Access Pass to Slow and Steady Success Academy is a monthly subscription plan that gets you access to every course that is currently available in this academy, as well as any that will become available in the future. Also, you'll get access to our private All Access Pass members only Facebook group.